At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey folks, welcome to the Phillies Talk Podcast. I'm Corey Seidman, he's Jim Salisbury. We're sitting here with you on a Sunday afternoon after the Phillies finished off a 4-game sweep in Pittsburgh over the Pirates. That's where Jim is, out in Pittsburgh. It's 2 days before the trade deadline. This is a very important week for the Phillies. And Jim, the Phillies are now a season high 8 games over 500 at 55-47. They have the 1-game lead on the Cardinals in the wild card race, also closing a bit of the gap on the Padres, who are in the second wild card spot. So all in all, just a productive weekend. The Phillies went out to PNC Park and they took care of business against a bad team.
Yeah, they did. They could actually be like a half game behind the Padres, depending on how that game shakes out here late on Sunday afternoon as we're recording. But a great weekend at PNC Park. A lot of Phillies fans out here making the drive. I can't say I blame them. It's one of the most beautiful ballparks in baseball. I'm actually sitting here right now in the empty ballpark looking at the Roberto Clemente Bridge and the beautiful Pittsburgh skyline. It's just a beautiful ballpark. And the Phillies really delivered here against the team that you mentioned they needed to. A poor team that's, waiting on the trade deadline so they can sell off again. The worst offensive team in the National League. And the Phillies took it to them. Their starting pitching was outstanding in the 4 games. They only allowed the starters only allowed 5 runs in 25 innings, capped by Aaron Nola today. Started off with Zach Wheeler. Ranger Suarez did a good job. Bailey Falter did a good job. So excellent series win. Alec Bohm swung it well all weekend. And again on Sunday, Nick Castellanos had a 3-hit game the other day, had a 4-hit game on Sunday. JT Realmuto continues to swing it. One of the things I kind of wrote about is a big week. Sunday is to me is the start of the work week. So this kicks off a big week. You kick it off with a sweep. Bryce Harper's going to be seen by a doctor tomorrow, maybe get the pins out of his thumb. Segura probably will be back this week. So those are 2 big bats, one that's going to be here this week, one that could be here at the end of August. And, of course, you got the trade deadline on Tuesday. So really pivotal week for the rest of the season here. And but you can't look too far ahead. You have to take care of business. And they come into Pittsburgh, and the first 4-game sweep in Pittsburgh since July 11, 12, and 13. There was a doubleheader in there, July 11, 12, and 13 of 1968. And that was the weekend my brother was born. So I don't really remember it, but certainly that time frame resonates with me. I looked up those 4 games. Chris Short, great left-hander out of the state of Delaware, won 2 of those games for the Phillies. He pitched on Thursday night. He pitched 7 innings, allowed 1 earned run. Then he came back on Saturday and pitched 3 scoreless. So with 1 day's rest, he comes back and pitches in relief, pitches a total of 10 innings in that series, and does not allow an earned run. So big weekend. We're down to 2 months left. It's getting exciting, Corey.
1968. There were 3 wild cards back then, right?
No, that was the last year of pre-divisional play, right? That was the year of the pitcher, and Chris Short was a good one. So, yeah, that series was played at Forbes Field, and I've been up there. It's long gone, but the outfield wall is still there. Flagpole is still there. And, of course, that great picture of Mazeroski rounding third base, which we've talked about before. One of the great pictures of a World Series game ending at 3:40 in the afternoon instead of like 1:40 in the morning. So, lot to talk about. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to get to the trade deadline. We're going to get to a lot of questions from you guys on Twitter. But you referenced JT Realmuto having the big series in Pittsburgh capped off today. I mean, this guy since July 2nd has been a run-producing machine. As many RBIs as games played over that span. His OPS has raised from 672 to 760, almost 100 points in 3 weeks. We spent the first couple months talking about how the Phillies needed more out of guys like Castellanos, out of Realmuto. Well, lately, Realmuto has done his job in the middle of the order. It's made a big difference for the Phillies, who have just been rattling off wins. They lose the series to the Cubs out of the All-Star break, but they've played very well since. And the offense should only get better with the imminent return of Gene Segura and then Bryce Harper a couple weeks after him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I said that talking to Michael on the pregame show the other night. I think the best is yet to come for this offense because guys like Realmuto are coming alive. And this is, I don't think, just a mirage. He's talking about how much better he feels mechanically at the plate. He just said something was off the first few months, but he feels like he's reeled it in and he's gotten it the last month. And he's swinging it with confidence, and confidence is just so important for a hitter. So he looks good. He's driving the ball the other way, which is a telltale that he's going good. He hit a home run through right field seats the other night. Castellanos is swinging it good. Schwarber hit another one today. And Alec Bohm, it just keeps getting better and better and better. Stott is getting better. So if you add Segura and Harper, your best two pure hitters back into the lineup, with the steadiness, the steady production you've gotten from Schwarber and Hoskins, and the improvement you're getting from Bohm, Realmuto, Castellanos, I really believe maybe the best could be yet to come for this offense.
So we're sitting here, it's about 7 p.m. on Sunday. We're like 47 hours away from the trade deadline. There haven't been that many big moves yet. I mean, the biggest move was Luis Castillo so far, the starting pitcher going from the Reds to the Mariners. The Phillies remain in the hunt for starting pitching. Jim has an article at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com kind of going through some of those names. There's the top of the market, which was Castillo and Montas. There's the bottom of the market, which is like the fifth starters who were available every trade deadline, talking about maybe like a Jordan Lyles or a Brad Keller, some of those guys in Kansas City. But there's also that middle tier, the middle tier that includes like a Tyler Mahle, a Noah Syndergaard. Who else among those sticks out to you as a possibility for the Phillies over these next 2 days?
All of those guys do. A guy who just walked by us in the hallway is Jose Quintana, leaving the ballpark today. He pitched a good one against the Phillies. I guess the question is, how much of an upgrade is he over Bailey Falter? I think he brings more experience. I still think they're trying. They would, all along, they've been prioritizing starting pitching. I still think center field, they have some interest in doing something there. I'm just not sure if they can get something done because everything I hear, the prices are exorbitant. And now I'm hearing that Tyler Mahle might not even move. So, who knows? You hear this stuff with 48 hours to go to the deadline. You're never sure what's right, and what's wrong, and what's true, and what's false, and what's fiction, and what's nonfiction, and what's posturing, and what's real. So I do expect Monday maybe to be a little bit busier because I think prices will come down as teams realize, okay, we have this guy, we want to really move him, we're going to have to come down on our price. But everything I can gather is prices are still very high for what you're getting back. Fifth starters, you're asking for future potential studs, in the major league level, and teams are just reluctant to do that. They added Edmundo Sosa, the utility infielder. I still would be surprised if they don't come out of here or come out of this trade deadline with another move with potentially a starting pitcher. I know they want to do something. Time will tell if they do. The good news is there's not much time left, so maybe tomorrow, maybe by Tuesday at the deadline, they'll have something to get done. These things, the intensity of this at this time of year really ramps up the last 48 hours.
Dave Dombrowski made a comment last week that, it was as of last week that it was still the point in the process where teams were asking for like the top one or two prospects in your organization for a back end starting pitcher. I've always kind of wondered like how the negotiations begin around July 20th or so. I don't know if he was exaggerating, but are the Pirates really justifiably asking a team for their top prospects for Jose Quintana, one of their top guys, and then just miraculously on Monday or Tuesday right before the deadline, it drops to the reasonable ask that it becomes?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how it works. I think that's how almost any negotiation works. Deadlines drive deals, whether it's trade deadlines or any other thing, any type of a contract. Put a deadline on it, and that gets things going. So, I understand teams in sellers markets will put high price tags on their guys. You only have a handful of teams over 500, say, in the National League, and there's some desperation on teams to get to the postseason, like Seattle, like Philadelphia. So you jack up the price on them, see what you can get, and then you get closer to the deadline, and the price will go down. I still think the Phillies are going to be very protective of their young pitching, and probably listen on some of their catching depth, some of their position depth that they have in the minors, maybe a second-tier pitcher or two. My belief is they'll still get a starting pitcher. I still think they need one. I tip my hat to Bailey Falter, the job he did the other day. But you can never have enough. And if they do get a pitcher, that doesn't mean Bailey Falter's not important to this club. Spot start, bullpen, relief. He's still going to figure in importantly because you never can have enough pitching.
The player that the Phillies acquired from the Cardinals on Saturday, Edmundo Sosa, the 26-year-old infielder, defensively, he grades out really well. Since the start of last season, he's been worth plus 13 defensive runs saved at shortstop, which is fifth among all major league shortstops over that span. And three of the guys ahead of him have like 3 times as many innings. So just shows you how productive he's been defensively. But this move kind of caught some people off guard, given the number of infielders the Phillies already have, given the fact that Gene Segura is going to be back in a few days. Nick Maton's also in the picture. How does Edmundo Sosa fit, in your opinion? Who's the odd man out? Because there was also the Bryson Stott versus Didi Gregorius conversation even before the Phillies brought in this defensive-minded shortstop and Sosa.
Right. I think at this time of the year, and it was a bit of a head-scratching move, at least on the surface when it was first made, because they have quite a bit of infield depth, and they're about to get Segura back. They had Yairo Munoz and Johan Camargo as your utility guys. So the odd man out in the short term is Camargo, who gets sent to AAA. But this time of year, when you have a good team and you're a playoff contending team, you want to make any move you can to get incrementally better. If it means one win, it's worth doing it. And they believe that Sosa makes that much of a difference defensively, whether it's coming off the bench late in the game, whether it's a spot start at short, second, or third. He's also an outstanding base runner, both instinctually and speed-wise, so he can help them in that regard late in games off the bench, pinch running. So, like I said, incremental improvements are really important for a team that's vying for a playoff berth, because sometimes one run, one inning, one win can make a huge difference in a pennant race. So in the short term, Camargo's out. We're going to see what happens in the long term, in the longer range term, and it's not even that long range because it could all kind of start coming to a head this week. Segura's been playing at Lehigh Valley. He's champing at the bit to get back here. I guess there's a chance he could be back as soon as Tuesday. I don't know. Maybe they'll wait till they get home later in the week, get him a few more bats. But we're going to see him in the short term, and he's going to go play second base. They might go 2 on, 1 off at first, and put Stott back at second base when Segura gets the day off. But ultimately, I really think Stott has earned his way into the lineup, and you kind of need to see him in the lineup more often than not. So that could mean he goes over to shortstop. What does that mean for Didi Gregorius, who has struggled with the bat for quite some time? I'm not sure what it means, but I could see his playing time be cut into. If Stott goes over to shortstop more often, Sosa becomes a very, very legitimate insurance policy if they decide to move on from Didi. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I'm not saying they will, but I think everything is potentially up in the air. But Didi defensively has really risen to the occasion here in the last couple of days. Saturday night he made a great defensive play for the second out in the 10th inning. Just a great defensive play behind Corey Knebel, and then 1 out earlier he was part of that big difference-making pickoff. And today, he's when Juris Familia's in the game and he's teetering again, Didi makes another great play to start an important double play. So he's really kicked it in defensively here the last couple days. Competition's always good. It pushes people. So we're going to see what happens. I mean, right after this trade deadline, you figure that out. This front office is going to have some decisions to make about, Segura going back to second, what it means for Stott. Does it mean more playing time for Stott at shortstop? What that means for Didi short-term, long-term, for his spot on the roster, for his role. Maybe he becomes more of a backup or a part-time player. Can he handle that? There's a lot to it, and it's all going to play out here, over the next, I'd say the next week.
Be remiss not to mention how impactful Corey Knebel has been lately. Two 1-2-3 innings against the Pirates on Saturday night to pick up that win. Jim, the Phillies bullpen since like the beginning of June has been really good. It's not just one guy. Knebel, 14 straight scoreless appearances. Sir Anthony Dominguez, 26 of 29. Jose Alvarado, 15 out of 17. Connor Brogdon, 18 out of 21. Brad Hand, 14 out of 17. So all these guys doing their job to the point that you even wonder if the Phillies had a reliever at the deadline. I mean, who could have seen that coming? But that is, as we've talked about, a distant need after starting pitching.
Yeah, Andrew Bellotti and Nick Nelson as well.
Yeah.
Bellotti's strikeout numbers have been – he struck out the side on Saturday night. All of those guys have done a great job down there. Would they still like to add a reliever? I'm sure they wouldn't say no to the right one. But I do think this bullpen's emergence, and it hasn't been just a couple of weeks. Like you said, it's been since June 1. I think it probably has back-burnered bullpen need. That said, if the right move pops up, I'm sure Dave Dombrowski would grab onto it. But I still think starting pitching followed by center field are probably prioritized ahead of bullpen at this point. What's happening in that bullpen is guys are building a lot of confidence. Guys are grabbing onto roles. And it is really good to see Corey Knebel. I mean, he was dominant on Saturday night. I looked at some of the velos, and his fastball was up like a mile and a half. The velo on his breaking ball was up. The spin rate was up. Everything was just sharper. He's just 14 scoreless. That'll build you some confidence, and it just looks like he's having a much more success throwing the breaking ball for strikes, getting it down. Getting that downward movement. It's not up here. And, he's a two-pitch guy, and if one of them's not working, he's going to be awful easy to figure out. I think that's kind of what we saw early. But, if he continues to get going, Sir Anthony, Hand, all those guys we talked about, Bellotti, Alvarado, it's been a good bullpen now for 2 months. That's a pretty good stretch of time. Now there's 2 months more of the season. Can they keep it up? They need to, because we know bullpens are really crucial.
So we got a lot of questions, Jim, from fans on Twitter. And as always, if you have any questions for us, if you're watching on YouTube, just drop them in the comments below. We'll try to get to some in the following podcast. But one of them, it deals with one of the Phillies relievers who has not pitched well. That's Jeurys Familia. He's been like the one guy who's stood out as just a bad season he's had. It's been a bad signing. 1 year, $6 million. When you compare it to some of the other price tags for relievers in similar tiers, like Adam Ottavino has outperformed him for a couple million less. Michael Givens, who the Phillies were in on, I believe, last deadline, signed for something similar, and he's performed as well. This question comes from Jared Mercer. Why do the veterans get preferential treatment, referring to Familia, Didi, and Odubel? We talked a little bit about where Didi fits into that whole infield puzzle. But, I mean, Familia, despite the price tag, is it possible he could be a DFA if this continues to go the way it's gone?
Yeah, I guess it's possible, because they're going to need to make some room. They're going to have Gibson coming back off bereavement later in the week. They're looking for pitching. They bring in a pitcher on Tuesday. They're going to have to make a move. I'd say some of his struggles have put his roster spot in a tenuous position. Rob Thompson was talking about some of the pluses he brings intangibly. We talked about how the bullpen's pitched so well last couple months. Familia has done a really great job mentoring some of those guys down there, and Alvarado and Sir Anthony in particular really swear by him and some of the leadership he's helped them with. He's a veteran guy, has been around a long time. He's a team-first guy. That said, that stuff only carries you so far. You have to see performance. And they probably have not seen enough of it where I think he survives if they start an influx of pitching here. Gibson, like I said, coming back, bringing in a guy from a trade. He he could be in some kind of trouble. So he needs to, when he gets his shots, he needs to pitch better, probably in a hurry.
Big Fudge Johnny asks, is it realistic to expect the Phillies to get anyone of value without giving up Abel, Painter, McGarry, Brown, or O'Hoppe? I mean, those are the top guys. And, if you're saying no to all of them, you wonder if you're even able to get someone better than like a fifth starter.
Well, it depends how you define value. I talked about the importance of sometimes just getting incrementally better, where a guy like Sosa can help your infield defense get that much better. Whether it's in a spot start or whether it's some starting role or coming off the bench. And, there's value in one win. So if you go out and you get any piece that helps you win a game or two, there's value in that. But I understand the question. Probably the most impactful talent you would acquire would require one of those names you've mentioned. And I think I don't think they would do Abel. I don't think they would do Painter. I really have my reservations whether they would do anything with McGarry. They just sent Ben Brown to Double-A today. He's had a real breakout season. I think for the right guy, maybe they listen on him. They listen on O'Hoppe. But if you're going to get big value, you're going to have to listen on your top guys, and that's quite a conundrum for the front office, especially when it comes to pitching. They think some of these guys could be here soon, next year, year after. It's an organization that has not developed a lot of pitching, and they feel like they finally have some power arms that are all projectable and could get here in a hurry, and they just don't want to lose them all or any of them really at one trade deadline. So we'll see what happens in the next 48 hours. They're going to have to be open-minded, maybe on a guy like O'Hoppe, maybe on a guy like Ben Brown to maybe get the starting pitcher they want. But if you're adding a fifth starter who is a rental, you got to be really judicious on what you give up.
At Phillies for Life asked about Zach Eflin's long-term outlook. It's unfortunate. Eflin talked prior to the season about how much he wanted to put together a full complement of starts heading into his walk year, not just for his free agent value, but for the Phillies as well. He hasn't pitched in more than a month. It's uncertain if he's going to pitch again. 7 seasons into his big league career, there's only been 1 year that he's had 130 plus innings. So you wonder what's next for Zach Eflin. These knee problems have sapped him of what looks like, a workhorse frame. He looks like a guy should be out there 180, 210 innings a year, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. What next is they hope he can get back on the mound here during the season. He's working hard. He's out there every day throwing, keeping his arm strength up. That said, he's not off a mound yet since they kind of changed their plan of attack on this injury. He has what they call, quite simply, they're calling it patellofemoral pain, which patello, kneecap, femoral, referring to the upper bone of the leg. So there's pain in there, and it's on his right leg, and he can't push. He's had chronic issues with his knees. It sucks because he's a talented guy. You mentioned the workhorse frame, healthy arm, sound arm, great arm. It's just the knee issues. And I really feel for him. Like I said, he's one of the best guys in that clubhouse. And there's no harder worker. There's no more earnest and good-hearted guy in that room. It's just he's got a bad knee. So hopefully they can work this thing out. But you have to think it might impact his free agency unless he makes a real quick return and pitch well, because teams are going to want to see a real healthy year of production before they commit long term. And yeah, this was supposed to be it. This was supposed to be that year that was going to unlock him getting a big deal in Philadelphia or somewhere else. And more importantly, I don't think he's a guy that's just driven by money. I think he's a guy that's driven by having 5-6 good seasons and getting to the postseason and being a stud on a good team. And unfortunately, these health issues with the knee have just taken a toll on him. So hopefully he can get it behind him and put up the continued innings that he's going to need to establish himself. But right now he's just been held back by that knee, and it's sad to see.
Getting back to the trade deadline, at Nicholson Dime asks, have you heard anything about Charlie Blackmon? It actually is kind of surprising that there's been so little about Charlie Blackmon, who is in the final guarantee year of his contract, and he's been really good for the Rockies lately. I mean, he's one of the few guys outfield-wise who I guess could make sense because even at his age, he could stand in center field for you. He's not going to be a above-average defensive player there, but offensively, he could certainly upgrade this Phillies team. Have you heard anything about him in any regard?
Just that he's out there. He's a Philly killer. He's a good hitter, and he'd certainly help. But I've heard more like defensive-minded backup type center fielders, guys that can kind of plug the hole out there. Guys like Laureano, and I think they had some interest in Brian Reynolds, who's here in Pittsburgh, but that price is going to be very high. But I would keep an eye on every name, and a guy like Charlie Blackmon certainly. I don't know that he's a pure center fielder; he's more of a right fielder, right?
Yeah, and he's never graded out well defensively in center field. I mean, it would not be a good situation there defensively. He's just so good, and the way he's killed Citizens Bank Park, I can understand why some fans are wondering about him.
I think you keep an eye on everything right until 6 o'clock right until 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. Keep an eye on everything.
Blackmon, by the way, can block trades to 15 teams, which also could play into what happens with him at the deadline. This one from @depressed Phillies fan who asks, should the Phillies rather Juan Soto go to the Cardinals or the Padres? Those have been the two teams connected to him the most. Those are the two teams the Phillies are in front of and, sandwiched really. The Cardinals behind them, the Padres in front of them. I would say it would be worse for the Phillies if Soto went to the Cardinals. He would just make them a formidable team. The Brewers are still a few games ahead of the Cardinals, so that plays into it as well. I mean, it's not like the Phillies would hope the Brewers could just come back to the pack. That's another very good club with great pitching. Whereas if he goes to the Padres, well, the Padres are ahead of the Phillies for that second wild card spot anyway. And when you look at the way the playoffs work this year, does it really make a difference if you get the second wild card versus a third wild card? You're pretty much doing the same thing. Yeah. If the Phillies were to finish in that final spot, they'd be playing the Brewers as opposed to, I guess, the Braves, which would, as of right now, would look even better.
Yeah. That's a tough one. I guess if you had your druthers, you'd think maybe Soto, you want Soto to end up in the American League. If I'm the Phillies, I don't worry about where Soto goes. I worry about myself. You have season series edge over San Diego, season edge, series edge over the Cardinals, and you just worry about yourself and take care of your own business, take care of your own roster. If Phillies get into the postseason and their pitching lines up, they don't have to use Wheeler and Nola to get in. They're going to be a tough out regardless of who they play in that first round, regardless of who it is. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Keep in mind, too, the Phillies have 11 more games against the Nationals. They've already beaten up on the Nationals, going 6-2, but you remove Juan Soto from that lineup, those games get even easier. This one, non-trade related from @JerkChicken, who asks, why haven't we seen Derek Hall play more first base? You look at Derek Hall, 22 starts, 21 of them at DH, just one at first base. You would think maybe the Phillies would get Rhys Hoskins off his feet a little more. Does that just speak to a lack of confidence they have in him defensively?
I think they've only done it once, I believe, maybe in St. Louis. Rhys's defense, it's been better lately. It hasn't, he's struggled at times, but I think he's been very, very passable recently, and he probably grades out ahead of Derek Hall on defense. And so they're just, one thing I've noticed is Thompson, they feel like they're having success with the lineup. They kind of leave it as is. I know they juggled it in the middle a little bit recently with Castellano going to fifth, but, a lot of folks say, well, why is Schwarber leading off? Why isn't he in the middle driving in runs? Well, Schwarber likes hitting one, and they're having a lot of success with him at one. That's why he's hitting one. I just feel like they believe that Hoskins grades out ahead of Derek Hall at first base, and other than the times they get Rhys off his feet, that's the way they want to go.
question from Not Alex 99 asking about what we think the cost would be for Martin Perez and Pablo Lopez. It's interesting just to look at those two together because they're both having career years. Pablo Lopez had a 1.83 ERA through the first 2 months. He's kind of come back to earth a little bit lately. I believe he got hit around actually earlier today. And Martin Perez, if you look at like the advanced metrics, he's hit corners like the outside corner and the inside corner at a higher rate than any pitcher in all of baseball, which kind of explains the career year he's having. So I guess my question in that regard to you, Jim, is what you think of going after a pitcher who's in the midst of a career year, who costs a little more because of what he's put together the last few months. You know, you look a year ago, Kyle Gibson had an ERA in the high twos when the Phillies acquired him. Now, he's been serviceable, but he's been Kyle Gibson since they got him, not the guy who had that crazy stretch with Texas early last season.
Yeah, things do have a way of leveling out. That said, both of those arms you mentioned are awfully good. The thing with Martin Perez is you hear that the Rangers actually want to keep him. There's a lot of uncertainty whether he's available. Pablo Lopez is a guy that I hear is available, and he's intriguing to me because you'd get him for 3 pennant races. You get him this year, and then you get 2 years of control. So that there's real value in that. Like you said, career year, you could benefit from him this year, and then he's in your rotation for 2 years. So, but you know that type of control costs, and you want one of those guys. I really think you're probably going to have to dig into one of your top 3: Abel, Painter, and McGarry, Ben Brown, and I just think there's a reluctance to dig into that top 3 on the Phillies' part. But again, we'll see what happens, you know, in the next 48 hours when desperation goes up, maybe costs go down, maybe willingness to part with top guys goes up. We'll see.
So we hope those were good answers to a lot of the questions that you had out there. Trade deadline is Tuesday at 6 p.m. If the Phillies make a trade before then, we'll be back with a podcast. If not, there will be one on Tuesday after the deadline. So thanks a lot for listening. He's Jim Salisbury. I'm Corey Seidman. Catch you later.